Hey beauties, it's me, Avik. Welcome back to the show. Story time is on, and we need to sit back for a while, do some skincare, and relax while I'm telling you this crazy story I found on the internet. So please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories. On the night of May 3rd, 1897, a 43-year-old widow named Mary Titus lay in her bed inside of her house in the small town of Plymouth, Pennsylvania. And Mary, as she laid there, she just could not fall asleep because she kept hearing this strange tapping sound coming from somewhere in her house. Eventually, Mary just stopped trying to fall asleep, and she just sat up and just listened really intently to figure out, where this sound is coming from. But she just couldn't do it. It was sort of erratic, and it seemed like it was coming from all over the house. And at one point, it felt like it was right below her, and then it was over here. I mean, it really was hard to pinpoint where it was even coming from, let alone what was actually causing it. And then, on top of that, the volume of this tapping was also changing. Sometimes it would get really loud, and then it would be super faint and she could barely hear it, but it was still there, somewhere in her house. But then, sort of inexplicably, the tapping sound just abruptly stopped. Mary is sitting up in bed, it's 2, 3 in the morning, and it's just silence in her house. And at that point, Mary told herself, okay, well, clearly it was some animal, or maybe it's a branch tapping on the outside of her house or something. She's rationalizing the sound. It's gone now, so it can't be harmful, and I should just stop thinking about it and actually go to sleep now. But shortly after laying her head back down on the pillow when she was almost asleep, she started hearing the sound again. And again, she just could not tell where it was coming from. Now, Mary, she was a widow, but she did have somebody else who lived with her in the house. It was her daughter, her 18-year-old daughter, whose name was Kara. Kara's father and Mary's husband had passed away tragically 11 years earlier in this terrible mining explosion. And really, even though it had been 11 years, Mary and Kara were still very much living in the shadow and the grief of, his death. This is something that they really had never been able to move past. And so, as Mary is laying here in bed and she's hearing this tapping sound starting again, part of her thinks, maybe it's Kara, maybe she's doing something. But really, what was going through her head when this tapping sound began again was how utterly alone she felt and how badly she missed her husband. Like, she really just wished he was here, because then she would have told him, hey, go investigate. I'm going to stay here. You go make sure the house is safe. But obviously, he was gone. He'd been gone for over a decade. And so eventually, even though Mary really didn't want to get up and go look for this tapping sound, because truthfully, she was just scared at this point, but she's thinking about her daughter Kara, who's downstairs, and heaven forbid there's some problem in the house. Maybe an animal has literally gotten into the house, and it could be hazardous. She doesn't know. So she needs to go and be the brave one and go find out where the sound is coming from and make sure her daughter's okay. And on top of that, her daughter Kara had recently had this really bad case of strep throat. And while she was recovering, she really was not back to 100%. And so Mary told herself, this is an opportunity as much as anything to go down and just check on her daughter and make sure she's okay. And so finally, Mary musters the courage and she takes her sheets off and she gets up out of her bed. And at the same time, the tapping is sort of rocketing all around the house. It's all over the place. And right as Mary steps onto the ground, she's out of her bed, the tapping stops. Mary starts walking towards the door, and there's nothing. She gets to the door, she opens it up, she listens, she's looking out, but there's nothing. And the house is completely silent. And there was something kind of eerie about it. It's like the sound was responding to Mary's actions. And suddenly, all of Mary's courage evaporated. And she thought, you know what? The sound has stopped. Everything's okay. I'm sure Kara's okay. I'm getting back in bed and I'm going to sleep. And that's what she did. She rushed back to her bed. She did not go check on Kara. She just got under the sheets, pulled them up to her chin, and just hoped the sound wouldn't come back. And it didn't. and eventually Mary fell asleep. The following morning, when Mary woke up, she immediately kind of took stock and realized, okay, I'm okay. Everything seems fine in the house. She listened and didn't hear any knocking sounds, and she quickly got up, she got dressed, she went downstairs into the kitchen, and Kara was actually already down there doing some needlepoint, and she seemed perfectly fine, albeit still recovering from her strep throat, but she was okay. She was in the kitchen in good spirits. And so Mary just kind of, breathed a sigh of relief here, even though, again, she really has no idea what that tapping was. She has no idea if it was sinister or not. This could be totally benign, but there was just something uneasy about it. And so it was just really nice to come down here and have life be totally normal. And so pretty quickly, Mary just fell into her everyday routine. She began prepping some food for her and Kara to eat, and then she and her daughter just started chatting. At no point did Mary bring up the tapping sound, in part because she didn't really even know what they meant. She was kind of spooked by it, didn't want to scare her daughter, so it never came up. But they're chatting, having their completely normal morning, when suddenly there's very clear and fairly loud tapping that starts not in the kitchen, but below the kitchen in the cellar. And as soon as the tapping starts, Mary immediately stopped because she recognized it as the same sound she was hearing the night before that spooked her so badly. And she looked over at Kara without saying anything, just seeing if maybe Kara heard the noises too. And Kara as well is looking at her mom like, "Did you hear that?" And Mary's like, "You heard that too. You heard that tapping." And Kara's like, "Yeah, I think it's coming from the cellar." And Mary, she's like, "I could have sworn I heard that tapping last night. It was actually keeping me up." And Kara, she said, "Well, it sounds like it's in the cellar. Maybe we have mice down there and they're rummaging around or something. That's probably what it is." And so Mary, who at this point is desperate to find a logical, non-scary explanation for what's going on here, just immediately goes down the stairs into the cellar and begins looking for mice that would prove that's all this is. It's mice making these sounds. But when she's down there, she's looking around and there's no mice. There's no sign of mice. And as she's down there, she starts hearing the tapping again. But now it's not coming from the cellar where they thought the sounds were originating. It's coming from somewhere above her. And as soon as Mary hears this tapping sound, she hears Kara reacting to it upstairs in the kitchen, like she was kind of startled by it. And so Mary runs back upstairs to the kitchen, she looks at Kara, and Kara is visibly distressed because she's like, "I heard it. It was in here. It was in the kitchen or somewhere nearby. I didn't see anything, but I heard it. As soon as you went down there, I heard it." And so at this point, Mary is undeniably scared. She doesn't know what this is, but it's gotten to the point where she cannot deny there is something strange happening in her house. Her daughter has now fully corroborated that. And so Mary said, "You know what? I'm going next door." They had a friend who lived next door, a guy that actually used to work with Mary's husband, who was sort of like their handyman and the guy that they would call on to kind of help them around the house. And so Mary, she left her house and she went next door, knocked on this guy's door, and when he came, she explained that there's something happening. There's knocking sounds happening in my house. It's scaring me and Kara. We can't figure out what it is. Can you please come take a look? And he was like, "Absolutely, I'll be over in a second." And so Mary goes back to her house and she and Kara are standing in the kitchen and periodically they're hearing these tapping sounds. And then the neighbor, he comes over, he comes inside, and right away, when he comes in, he starts to hear the tapping too. And Mary's like, "What is that?" And Kara, she's totally spooked. And the guy's like, "I think it's your pipes. I think that's all this is. It sounds very much like your pipes are banging against the wood inside your house or something. So let me just check your plumbing. That's probably what this is." And so Mary and Kara, they're like, "Great, like he seems pretty confident that that's all this is." And so Mary and Kara, they kind of hover around the neighbor as he begins to check the kitchen and the bathroom plumbing. But as he's checking all these different areas, that as he's checking them, the tapping sound is persisting and it's not coming from the pipes. Sometimes it sort of seems like the tapping is coming near the pipes, but other times, as he's working right here, the tapping sound is coming from somewhere else on the other side of the house. And eventually, Mary and Kara started to sense that the neighbor, who had come in very confident that this was no big deal, was starting to show signs that he too felt a little uncomfortable, like something was off here. And then sort of out of nowhere, when the tapping got really loud, and it was now apparent not only to this guy, but also to Mary and Kara that the tapping could not be coming from the plumbing because it's nowhere near here, it's behind us. And the man, he turned around and he looked at Mary and Kara. His face is ashen, he really looked pretty upset. And he said, "You know, the last time I heard this sound was in the mine. It was when your husband was killed in that explosion. You know, he died, but other men got trapped in the mine behind all this rubble from the explosion, and they couldn't get out. And they were tapping on the rocks over and over again until they all died. That's what this sounds like." After that, the man just got up and hastily left and just told them,